For 3 years, the Whitmore mansion had a reputation nobody wanted. It was the home of one of the richest men in the country, but it was also the place where no nanny could survive. Some nannies left after one day. Some lasted only a week. And some walked out of the mansion in tears, promising they would never return. Not because the house was frightening, not because the billionaire was cruel, but because of 3 children who seemed impossible to control. The billionaire's triplets, Leo, Luca, and Lily Whitmore. Everyone in the city knew their names. They were the children of Adrian Whitmore, a man who built a billion-dollar empire from nothing. To the outside world, Adrian had the perfect life. He had a beautiful mansion surrounded by gardens. He had expensive cars sitting inside his private garage. He had businesses across different countries. People looked at him and thought he had everything anyone could ever want. But behind the tall gates of his mansion was a truth nobody saw. Adrian Whitmore was a billionaire who could buy almost anything, except happiness for his own children. Every morning, inside the Whitmore mansion started the same way. Chaos. The staff would wake up early, hoping the day would be peaceful. But the moment the triplets opened their eyes, everyone knew trouble was coming. Leo was the leader. He was smart, curious, and always planning something. Luca was the adventurous one. He loved turning everything into a game, even things that were not supposed to be games. And Lily, the youngest looking of the 3, was the most unpredictable. She could look innocent one second, then create the biggest disaster the next. Together, they were unstoppable. One morning, a nanny walked into the kitchen and found that all the breakfast plates had disappeared. After searching everywhere, they discovered the triplets had hidden them inside the garden because they wanted to surprise everyone. Another day. They took expensive paintings from the hallway and replaced them with drawings they made themselves. The drawings were colorful and funny, but the paintings were worth millions. The staff did not know whether to laugh or panic. And then there were the moments when things went too far. The triplets would throw toys across the room when they were upset. They would scream when someone tried to correct them. They would refuse to listen to anyone. Many people thought they were spoiled because they had grown up surrounded by luxury. But there was something strange about them, something people did not understand. Even when they caused trouble, they never looked happy. They never laughed. They never smiled. Their chaos was not because they were enjoying themselves. It was like they were trying to get someone's attention. Over the years, nanny after nanny came into the mansion, and nanny after nanny left. The first nanny lasted only 2 days. She resigned after the triplets locked themselves inside a room and refused to come out for hours. The second nanny lasted 4 days. She left after the children destroyed the entire playroom. The third nanny lasted less than a week. She told Adrian something nobody had ever said before. "Mr. Whitmore, your children don't need another person to watch them. They need someone to reach them." Those words stayed in Adrian's mind, because deep down he knew she was right. Adrian loved his children. He really did. But running a billion-dollar company came with responsibilities. There were meetings. There were flights. There were deals that could not wait. Every time he promised himself he would spend more time with them, something always came up. And without realizing it, years were passing. His children were growing up. One night, Adrian returned home from a business trip. He walked into the mansion, expecting to see his children sleeping peacefully. Instead, he found them sitting alone in the living room. No laughter, no excitement, just silence. He watched them from a distance. The triplets were looking at old family photos of their mother. Their mother had passed away years earlier, and after that, everything changed. Adrian realized his children were not angry. They were hurting. They had lost the person who gave them the most attention and love. And while Adrian was trying to give them the best life money could buy, they were missing the one thing money could never purchase: time. The next morning, another resignation letter arrived. Another nanny had quit. Adrian sat in his office, staring at the paper in his hand. He had run companies with thousands of employees. He had solved impossible business problems. But his own children were the one thing he could not fix. His assistant entered the room with a folder. "Mr. Whitmore, I may have found someone." Adrian looked up. "Another nanny?" His assistant nodded. She is different. 8 the insight. Everyone says that. The assistant placed a file on the desk. Her name was Elara Voss. She had experience with difficult children, but more importantly, she believed children were not problems to solve. They were people to understand. Adrian looked at her information. Then he looked toward the window, where his children were playing alone outside. For the first time in a long time, he felt a small hope. Maybe this time would be different. Maybe this nanny would last longer than 3 days. But what Adrian didn't know was that Elara Voss was about to enter the most challenging job of her life. And the Billionaire's triplets were about to meet the one person who would finally change everything. The next morning, the Whitmore mansion was unusually quiet. The staff moved around carefully, almost as if they were afraid to make too much noise. Everyone knew a new nanny was arriving that day, and everyone had the same question in their minds. How long will she last? The workers had seen this happen many times before. A new nanny would arrive with confidence. She would walk through the huge golden doors believing she could handle anything. But after a few days, she would leave exhausted. Some would complain about the children's behavior. Some would say the triplets were impossible. And some would simply walk away without saying goodbye. The staff believed Elara Voss would be no different. When Elara arrived at the mansion, she looked nothing like the other nannies. She did not come with a long list of rules. She did not come looking nervous. She simply carried a small bag, looked around the beautiful mansion, and smiled. The house was bigger than any place she had ever worked. The floors were polished marble. The walls were decorated with expensive paintings. The furniture looked like it belonged in a museum. But Elara noticed something else. The mansion was beautiful, yet it felt empty. There were no sounds of children laughing, no family moments, no warmth, just silence. Before she could say anything, the house manager approached her. "Miss Voss," he said seriously, "I need to warn you about something." Elara looked at him. "The children?" He nodded. "They are not like other children." He explained everything. The broken items, the tantrums, the nannies who left, the endless chaos. Then he lowered his voice. "Most people don't make it past 3 days." Elara looked toward the staircase. At that moment, 3 little faces appeared. The triplets were watching her. Leo, Luca, and Lily stood there quietly, studying the new person who had entered their home. They were waiting to see if she would be like everyone else, waiting to see if she would get angry, waiting to see if she would leave. Most adults would have immediately tried to control the situation, but Elara did something unexpected. She walked toward the staircase, sat down on the floor, and smiled. "Hi," she said softly. The triplets said nothing. They only stared. "My name is Elara," she continued, "and I heard this house has 3 very interesting children." The children looked at each other. Nobody had ever described them that way. Usually, people called them difficult, troublemakers, impossible. But Elara didn't call them any of those things. She simply smiled. "Would you like to show me your favorite place in the house?" The triplets looked confused. They were prepared for a lecture. They were prepared for rules. They were prepared for someone to tell them what they could not do. But this woman was different. Of course, they did not suddenly become perfect. The first day was still difficult. They tested her. They wanted to know if she would break like the others. When Elara left her room for a moment, she returned and found her shoes missing. She searched around and heard quiet laughter coming from behind a curtain. The triplets were hiding there, waiting for her to become angry. But instead of shouting, Elara smiled. "I see we have a little mystery to solve." The children looked surprised. She did not yell. She did not punish them. She simply asked them to help find the shoes. Slowly, they brought them back. The next day, they tried another trick. They spilled juice across the dining table before breakfast. The staff immediately panicked. They expected Elara to lose control, but she calmly handed each child a towel. "Accidents happen," she said, "but when we make a mess, we learn how to fix it." The triplets looked at her differently. She wasn't fighting them. She was teaching them. Days passed. Something unusual began happening inside the mansion. The triplets started waiting for Elara every morning. They started telling her stories. They started asking her questions. They even started showing her things they had created. The staff noticed a change before Adrian did. The same children who once caused problems from morning until night were becoming calmer. They still played. They still had energy. But the anger was slowly disappearing. And then, for the first time in years, something happened that shocked everyone. The triplets laughed. A real laugh. A happy laugh. The sound filled the mansion. The staff stopped what they were doing. They looked at each other in disbelief, because they had almost forgotten what the children's laughter sounded like. But Elara noticed something nobody else did. Even though the children were becoming happier, there was still sadness inside them. One evening, while they were drawing together, Lily quietly asked Elara a question that revealed the pain they had been hiding for years. Elara realized the triplets were not trying to destroy the mansion. They were trying to fill a space in their hearts. And she knew that if she wanted to truly help them, she would have to do more than just be their nanny. She would have to help heal their family. Meanwhile, Adrian was watching from a distance. He noticed the changes. His children were different. They were smiling more. They were calmer. But he still wondered, was it temporary? Could one nanny really do what nobody else could? Then one afternoon, Adrian received an unexpected call. He needed to return home immediately. And when he opened the mansion door, he would see something that would make him believe Elara had completely lost control. A scene filled with chaos. For the first time in years, something unusual was happening inside the Whitmore mansion. There was laughter. Not the fake laughter people used when they wanted to impress someone. Not the small smiles the triplets forced when visitors came. Real laughter. The kind that filled the entire house. The staff could hardly believe it. The same children who once made every nanny run away were now waking up early just to spend time with Elara. They wanted to show her their drawings. They wanted to tell her their stories. They wanted her attention. And most importantly, they trusted her. But Adrian Whitmore still didn't fully understand what was happening. He was used to disappointment. He had seen too many nannies promise they would change his children's behavior, only to leave a few days later. So even though he noticed a difference, a part of him was still waiting for everything to fall apart. He thought, maybe it's only temporary. Maybe they are just pretending. But he was about to discover something that would change the way he saw everything. It was a beautiful Saturday afternoon. Adrian had planned to spend the day at a business event outside the city. But during the meeting, he received a message from his assistant. Mr. Whitmore, you may want to come home early. Adrian looked at his phone. What happened? There was a short pause before the reply came. It's about the children. Immediately, Adrian became worried. His mind started racing. Had they broken something? Had they hurt themselves? Had Elara finally given up? He ended the meeting early and drove back to the mansion. During the entire journey, he imagined the worst. Maybe everything had returned to normal. Maybe Elara was not different after all. When Adrian arrived, the mansion was strangely quiet. He stepped out of his car and walked toward the entrance. The moment he opened the door, he froze. He couldn't move. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. The beautiful living room looked completely different. The expensive carpet was covered in milk. The furniture had splashes everywhere. There were empty milk containers scattered around the room. Milk was dripping from the table. Milk was on the floor. Milk was everywhere. And standing in the middle of the disaster were his 3 children, Leo, Luca, and Lily. Their clothes were covered in milk. Their faces were covered in milk. But they were laughing harder than Adrian had ever seen them laugh. And beside them was Elara. Her hair was messy. Her clothes were soaked. She looked completely exhausted. For a moment, Adrian could only stare. After everything he had seen, after all the nannies who had failed, he thought the same thing. She lost control. Adrian slowly walked into the room. The triplets immediately stopped when they saw him. Their laughter disappeared. They looked nervous. They expected anger. They expected punishment. They expected him to tell them they had ruined everything again. But Adrian didn't speak. He looked around the room. Then he looked at Elara. What happened here? His voice was serious. The staff nearby became nervous. Everyone expected Elara to apologize. Everyone expected her to explain why she allowed such a disaster. But before Elara could answer, something surprising happened. Lily stepped forward. "It was our idea," she said quietly. Adrian looked at his daughter. She continued, "We wanted to make something fun for Elara." Adrian was shocked. His daughter rarely explained herself. She rarely opened up. Leo and Luca also stepped closer. They started explaining what happened. They had been learning about teamwork and wanted to create a fun experiment. They wanted to surprise Elara. But the plan became bigger than expected. The milk spilled. One bottle became two. Two became many. Soon, the entire room was covered. It was a complete disaster. But for the first time, it was a happy disaster. Adrian looked at Elara. "Why didn't you stop them?" Elara looked around the room and smiled. "Because sometimes children need a moment to be children." Adrian said nothing. She continued, "I knew they made a mess. I knew this room could be cleaned. But I also knew something more important was happening." She looked at the triplets. They were laughing. Those words hit Adrian deeply. Because she was right. The room could be repaired. The furniture could be replaced. The carpet could be cleaned. But the years his children spent feeling lonely, he could never get those back. That night, after the mansion was cleaned, Adrian sat alone in his office. He looked through old pictures of his children. Pictures from when they were younger. Pictures of them smiling with their mother. Then he looked at recent pictures. Most of them showed quiet faces. Children who had everything except enough attention. For the first time, Adrian admitted something he had avoided for years. He had been trying to give his children the best life possible. But he had forgotten that children don't only need luxury. They need love. They need time. They need someone who listens. And Elara had given them something money could never buy, a reason to smile. The next morning, Adrian watched from the hallway as Elara played with the triplets. They were laughing, running, talking. They looked like a normal, happy family. And Adrian realized something. Elara was not just another nanny. She was the first person who truly understood his children. But there was still one question in his mind. Why had every other nanny failed? And how had Elara succeeded where everyone else gave up? The answer would change everything. Because Elara was about to reveal something about the triplets that even Adrian never knew. After the milk disaster, something inside Adrian Whitmore changed. For years, he had looked at his children's behavior as a problem he needed to solve. The broken toys, the destroyed rooms, the endless complaints from nannies. He thought his children were simply difficult. But after watching them laugh with Elara, he finally understood the truth. His children were not looking for someone to control them. They were looking for someone to understand them. The next few weeks were different inside the Whitmore mansion. The house that was once filled with silence slowly became filled with happiness. Every morning, Adrian started seeing something he had almost forgotten. His children smiling. Leo was no longer spending all his time trying to create trouble. Instead, he was using his creativity to build things. Luca, who once turned everything into a competition, started helping others. And Lily, who used to hide her emotions, began talking about how she felt. The triplets were still energetic. They were still playful. They were still children. But the anger that had followed them for years was disappearing. And everyone knew who had made the difference. Elara Voss. One evening, Adrian found Elara sitting in the garden with the children. They were looking at the stars while she told them stories. Adrian stood there quietly, watching. He had seen many people take care of his children, but he had never seen anyone connect with them this way. Later that night, he approached her. "I need to ask you something," Adrian said. Elara looked at him. "Why did you succeed when everyone else failed?" For a moment, Elara was silent. Then she smiled. "Because everyone else saw 3 difficult children." She looked toward the window where the triplets were sleeping. "I saw 3 children who were hurting." Adrian lowered his eyes. Those words were difficult to hear because he knew they were true. Elara explained that from the first day she met the triplets, she noticed something. Whenever they caused trouble, they always looked toward the door, like they were waiting for someone to come. They were not trying to destroy things. They were trying to get noticed. They wanted their father to stop working for a moment and see them. They wanted someone to choose them. Adrian felt a pain in his chest because he realized his children had been asking for his attention for years, and he had been too busy to notice. From that day, Adrian made a decision. He changed his schedule. He started having breakfast with his children. He attended their activities. He listened to their stories. For the first time, the billionaire who could run companies across the world was finally learning how to be a father, and the triplets noticed. They were happier than ever. Months later, the Whitmore mansion was completely different. The staff who once feared the children now laughed with them. The rooms that were once filled with chaos were filled with memories. The triplets still played jokes. They still made small messes. But now, those moments were filled with laughter instead of anger. And whenever someone asked about the legendary triplets who chased away every nanny, everyone had the same answer. There was only one person who stayed: Elara Voss. One day, Adrian walked into the living room and saw something that surprised him. The triplets were sitting with Elara, looking through old family photos. They were showing her pictures of their mother, pictures they had hidden away for years. Because before Elara arrived, talking about their mother always made them sad. But now, they could remember her with smiles. Adrian realized Elara had done more than take care of his children. She helped them heal. A year after Elara arrived, Adrian stood in the same mansion where so many nannies had failed. He remembered the day she walked through those doors. Everyone believed she would leave within 3 days. But she stayed. She fought for the children when nobody else understood them. She showed them patience when others showed frustration. And she reminded Adrian of the most important lesson. A child who causes trouble is not always asking for punishment. Sometimes they are asking for love. The billionaire's triplets were never impossible. They were simply waiting for someone who would never give up on them. And Elara Voss became the only nanny who did what nobody else could. She didn't just survive 3 days with the billionaire's children. She changed their entire world. The end. Before you go, if this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe and join us for more powerful stories. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next one.